So this is my second part of the same lecture, how to write a research paper effectively. And I use the term effectively. That means you want to be successful in writing a research paper and publishing it. That's our goal. With that goal in mind, let us go ahead with the second part. Okay, let me see. Yes. So we talked about the title. Now, the second part of the paper is the abstract. Those who were with me last session, I told you and I asked you, which part of the paper do you prefer to write first? And you answered, some of you answered, is the table and figure. And then some people said, is the method section, but definitely not the abstract first. Abstract we write towards the end of writing the paper, but it appears immediately after the title page. So how to write an abstract? You see here, abstract should be brief, comprehensive summary of the contents of the article. This is the keyword, of the contents of the article. I'll come to this point again. Do not include information. Do not include information that does not appear in the body of the paper. I've seen many times people go beyond what is there in the paper in writing the abstract. Abstract is the summary of the content of the paper, of the content of the paper. So you report rather than evaluate. Do not evaluate. Do not evaluate. Evaluation part is in the discussion section, not in the abstract. That's the mistake people often do. So do not add to or comment on what is in the body of the paper. This is part of discussion. Okay, so it is not part of abstract. Abstract again is the gist of your main findings and the paper. So there are two formats. Most of the journals, I should say, nowadays, use a structured format. But you must follow the journal style. I always tell you, if you want to be an effective writer, first thing you have to do, just follow the journal style. I often read at least two recently published papers. I print them, copy them, and just follow them in total, whatever way they are writing the paper, I follow them, all the style. So some journals use these structures like background, objective, design or method, results, and conclusion. The wording depends on the journal. You must follow the wording, what title they use. This is one way of writing the abstract. The other way, it can be a single paragraph. And word limit also different from journal to journal. Usually 200 to 50, 200 to 250 words. American Journal of Public Health use 180 words. Yes, you have to follow 180 words for that journal. Some journals may be just 150 words. So follow the journal style. Often, abstract includes keywords. Number of keywords varies from 5 to 7. Sometimes some journals do not accept any keywords. Okay. So abstract is self-contained. Define all abbreviations. Do not use any abbreviations or acronyms. You can use them, but define them. Spell out names of tests or drugs. Define unique terms. Paraphrase rather than quote. Usually, we do not use any references, but I have seen very few abstract with maybe one reference, but usually do not use any references. Second part, very important part of the body of the paper is the introduction. I call it a funnel-shaped approach. Look at the funnel. It has a broad base and gradually goes to the tip. So you will introduce a topic, your subject, with a broad base. So first sentence should be very general, nothing specific. And gradually, you go to the main objective of the paper. So provide contents and background, but not a history. Importance of the topic in the context of the population. If you work for Malaysia, what is the importance of the subject that you are going to describe, you are going to study? It can be one population, it can be general population, it can be even world. So depending on the context of your population, you'll highlight the topic. What is the importance? If you work for public health, what is the public health importance of that topic in the population? Then you find out what have been done previously. Gradually lay down the foundation and then come to the point, what is the problem you are going to investigate or talk about? And you may say something why this is so important. One of the reasons, there is a gap in the knowledge. So that could be one compelling reason that you are doing this study. If you can identify the gaps, that's an important part of writing a paper. You explain any findings of previous studies that you are challenging or furthering. Gradually, with evidence, lead the readers to narrow down and focus to your study hypothesis, research question, and the study design. Remember, not all papers, all research should have a hypothesis. Some of the research are hypothesis driven, but many research we do to find out a hypothesis. For example, cross-sectional study can generate hypothesis. It does not start with a hypothesis. Okay. So your focus would be why you are doing this study. What have been done so far? Where is the gap? Based on that, you can narrow down your focus and say, this is my research question. And then you say, what are your objectives? Usually, I use 2 to 3 objectives. Obviously, just not one objective. It can be 2 or 3. 4 is a little bit more than what is needed. So I want to caution you, do not be too ambitious. If it is 4 or 5 objectives, people will question, can he or she do this in this one paper? So don't be too ambitious. That's part of our introduction. So introduction is generally around 2 pages. It can be little less than 2 pages, but not exceeding 2 pages. Now comes the method section. That's the most easy part to do, but it's more elaborate. So you can use subheadings for method section. The first paragraph, or very first sentence in method section, you should write about when you did the study, where you did the study, what type of study design you have done. Is it a cross-sectional study, cohort study, or what? Is it a randomized control design or community-based study? You can tell what exactly you have done, what type of study design you have used. In some cases, you may have to tell how do you do sampling. If you applied a random sampling or randomized control trial, how did you do randomization? All these things comes in the first paragraph or first and second paragraph. Okay. Then next you describe your subject and participants. Immediately after this thing, you describe your subject and participants. So subject means whole population that you studied and participants who are among the population. How do you select them? Did you use any inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria or not? If it is, describe them. Usually couple of inclusion criteria, but very few exclusion criteria. Your exclusion criteria should not be too large. That means you are excluding many people, okay? So this is my first paragraph, or you can say 1 or 2 paragraphs. And the following paragraph, here I said second paragraph, but it can be third paragraph also, depending on how much you describe here in first paragraph. So second paragraph or the following paragraph is the ethical procedures. Most of the studies we do, we must follow certain ethical procedures. Some people call it human subject procedures, or IRB, Institutional Review Board clearance. Some journals require the IRB number. Most journals do not need it. But I have seen people submitting the IRB number within parentheses, confirming that you did it. But generally it is not required. But I have also seen to the extreme, they ask for the letter. That I have also seen, but that's very rare. Is everybody okay so far? So we are continuing method section. I said, is a lot of writing in method section. You will elaborate about your data collection procedures. If you use a questionnaire, you must describe the questionnaire. How do you describe? What are the general content of the questionnaire? How do you phrase the questions? So and so. If you use any other instruments, describe them. Sometimes we use some lab instruments, describe them. If there are lab methods, you must describe them. And any definitions you have used, we sometimes call it case definitions. It's better to explain them. Monitoring, if you do any community-based studies, monitoring is a big part of your research. Then comes statistical methods. That's the heading, but that has a subheading, sample size estimation. So in statistical method, you must mention what statistical program you have used, either SPSS, SAS, or R, or any other programs with reference. And you'll try to find out how to write reference for statistical method. There is a specific way of writing the reference for the statistical method. For example, if it is IBM's SPSS, there with the current version, there is one way of writing it. The previous version is another way of writing it. So be very particular about writing the reference of statistical methods. Usually we use the version number also. What version? Is it SPSS 28 or 26 or 25? You should mention that. Under statistical methods, normally we divide in three groups: descriptive statistics, and then inferential statistics. And then when you compare, what are the groups did you use to compare what with what? These details should be there in statistical methods. And normally we use a p-value of 0.05 or less as a statistical significance. That you should also mention at the end of that section. You can separate out sample size estimation part from statistical method. And we will talk about that in a different session, how to do sample size estimation. So that's part of our method. This is all about method. The next part is the results section. First sentence, how many samples you used? Was there any dropout? If there is any dropout, what percentage out of total? And reasons for dropout. This is important part I want to mention. Many journal papers I read or I review, they do not mention reasons for dropout. But this is important part because this will help future researchers to do similar studies if they know upfront why people can be dropped out of your study. Okay. One problem is about dropout is that if dropout rate is very large, it is difficult to publish your paper. How large is large? There's no number, but usually I should say if it is more than 40%, is going to be large dropout. But again, depends on the type of study you are doing and the population you are studying. If the population is very, say, poor population, and you are doing community-based studies, there could be large dropouts. There are reasons for that. So if there are dropouts, if possible, compare the subjects that you have included and you have excluded. Generally, we do not publish a separate table like this, but if you are doing a thesis, this is definitely a good thing to do. Compare them and make separate tables. But because our number of tables are limited in a journal, we generally do not include this kind of table, but it's good to have the data in the text even though you do not include a separate table. What I wanted to say, why some people were excluded. The people who are excluded, their characteristic, and the people who are included, their characteristics, are they similar or different? That will tell whether your study is valid or not, whether you are biased or not. Very important point. Okay, like method section, you can use also subheadings in results, but not always required. I said you may use subheadings. Usually we talk about the demographics of the people, then study variable, and any mention about important findings from the tables and figures. Summarize them in the result. Summarize. I say summarize them. Do not write all the findings from the table and figures in the results section. Only summary, only important things. Because tables are and figures are there, people will read them. Okay. Use tables and figure numbers in the text. Do not forget that. Sometimes people just mention them without referring to the tables and figures, but don't forget that. Now, the large part and quite strong part and quite difficult part is the discussion section. If I say most difficult part of the paper to write is the discussion section. I've seen many people just make it like a short discussion. Sometime last paper I have reviewed, it had 2 paragraphs only. I reviewed back saying that your discussion must be expanded. And that is required. About 2 to 3 pages discussion. Try at least 2 pages, if not 3 pages. But too long is not good. 3 pages, a little bit, I should say, longer discussion, but that's the limit I'm saying. 3-page limit. Do not exceed 3 pages. 2.5 pages is good. Okay. So please follow what I'm saying about page limits. Please note down, very important. Okay, so first part, and I said this is discussion because I have seen many problems in writing discussion. So what should you write in the first paragraph? Very important. You narrate the important findings. Just 3-4 sentences max. So your important findings, maybe 4, maybe 3. So just narrate them without talking about too much about the data. Just tell your important findings. This is a cautionary note. And I have seen this again and again and again. People repeat the results word by word in the discussion. That is wrong. Do not do that. Do not repeat the results word by word. Just a summary of major findings is okay. So what I do, if I have 4 important findings, I narrow them in one first paragraph and then explain them one at a time, next few paragraphs. Again, I'm saying if you have 4 important findings, narrate them in one paragraph, that is your first paragraph, and take one at a time and explain them, compare them with previous findings. What is their finding, what is your finding? Are they similar or different? And if you can do a little bit more, why if it is different? Is it because their method was different? Is it because their study was small, yours is bigger? You cannot say their study was big and yours is small, so you didn't find this. And that also an important thing. I have seen people saying that our results were not significant because we had a small sample size. That is bad. Then question is, why did you do that study with a very small sample size? Why you didn't really do the sample size calculation prior to your study? If you have followed the procedure of doing sample size, you should get information based on your sample size. Then you cannot say my conclusion did not reach the statistical, we didn't find the statistical difference, significant statistical difference because I have this small sample size. That statement is wrong because you didn't start with right number of sample size. Okay, so compare your study with other studies and always refer to what was your objective, what was your hypothesis. It's good to tell in the discussion that our objective number 1, 2 were met. You can also say our third objective was not met. We didn't find valid data in support of hypothesis number 3. That's okay. You can do another study to do it. Okay, so if you can, not necessarily you have to say our hypothesis 1 was proven, hypothesis 2 was proven, hypothesis 3 was not proven. You don't have to say that, but technically what I'm trying to tell you, refer to your original research objective that you mentioned in the introduction. Okay, here also you may use subheadings. Okay, in the discussion you should mention, do the results support or contradict the existing data? Mention why if you can. Compare and contrast. Always is good to have a section of limitations of your study, but not too many. Remember, if you dig out your weaknesses too much, reviewers say, no, this is not a publishable data. Okay, so make it simple, but don't forget that's an important area. Also, you can mention about your strengths. Last part of the discussion, a separate section with a separate heading, conclusions. Conclusions is a plural. Okay, so you will mention summary of the discussion and data or results in the conclusion. Here, never introduce anything new in the conclusion. What have not been discussed, do not introduce anything new in conclusions. Second thing, do not use any new references. in the conclusions. You can repeat the references that were discussed, but never ever new references in the conclusions. So your references mostly in the introduction section and discussion section. Some references are there in the method section. So mostly introduction, some in the method, and mostly in the discussion section. No new references in the conclusions. In the conclusion here, you can add a sentence, one sentence or two, about future recommendations or future studies. Some journals want a separate sections. Then only you use a recommendation as a separate section. Otherwise, not. Otherwise, not. Otherwise, it's just a part of the conclusion. Okay, that's the part of the whole body of the paper. Okay, now a few things I should talk about writing the text. Redundancy is a bad thing. When you write the text, avoid redundancy. You can see many examples here. The underlined words, these are redundant. If I say a total of 68 participants, this a total of you can avoid. You shouldn't write this part, but many journals, many papers, they use it. It's not too much a problem, but try to avoid this kind of redundancy. Especially this sentence, I have seen many times people use a total of 68 participants, 120 participants, so and so. We do not do too much problem with that, but this okay. But try to avoid any kind of redundancy. Here is a sentence you definitely can avoid, like 4 different groups saw it. So always 4, they're different. So you can say 4 groups saw. Absolutely essential, you don't need absolutely. You can say essential. Has been previously found. When it is in the past, definitely previously. You can delete that. You can say has been found. Small in size, definitely small means in size. So you don't have to, the boy is small. If you say boy is small in size, okay, is a little bit okay, but not, if you can avoid, that's better. Completely anonymous. When it's anonymous, it's always anonymous. It's not complete or partial. Summarize briefly. When it's summarized, it definitely is brief. Period of time, just say time. Now, other thing I want to say, try to use active voice, not passive voice. This is my own writing, okay? I wrote a poor sentence like this. Diarrhea incidence was not reduced by long-term supplementation of iron. That was my iron study in Bangladesh. That was published in Journal of Nutrition. Okay, they suggested use an active voice. So I wrote back, long-term iron supplementation did not reduce diarrhea incidence. So please use these kind of statements and examples to write good English and try to write in active voice. Another example, carbon dioxide was consumed by the plant is a correct English, but better way of writing is the plant consumed carbon dioxide. So this is an active voice. Okay. Another thing, try to avoid I, we, first person. Try to avoid first person in the body of the paper. Example, the investigators observed is a better way of writing instead of we observed. I have seen many journal articles, they use this first person. Try to avoid that. Okay, sometime we cannot find out who this we are. Is yourself, your co-authors, or what? So when we say we usually classify bird song on the basis of frequency, this we do not know what, you or the previous investigator or scientist or who. So better to write, researchers usually classify bird song on the basis of frequency. And a we is called editorial we. So is try to avoid this kind of first person. Okay. Wordiness. Do you know, I attended an editor's workshop. The editor mentioned how much each word cost for the journal. You can calculate that actually. So in a given journal, you can find out how many articles, in a given article, how many total word count. If the total word count is that much and the total cost of the journal is this, you can calculate how much each word costs. So try to avoid wordiness. Try to make it simple. Okay? So if I say the present study, I can say this study. So 2 words instead of 3 words. For the purpose of, we can say for or to. At the present time, we can say now. Based on the fact that, we can say because. There were several students who completed the questionnaire. You can delete this there where. You can say several students completed the questionnaire. Okay. And we are almost at the end. Now journals want author's contribution in the paper. If you have 5 authors, what they have done, each of them, each author must have participated sufficiently, intellectually or practically for the content of the article, including the conception, design, and conduct of the experiment, and for the data interpretation, writing the paper, reviewing the paper, everything. So not everybody will do all the works. So you can divide among the authors who did what. Okay. The cover letter. Very simple, but important. Cover letters should be succinct and focus on the importance and novelty of your findings, as well as how they relate to the scope of the journal. And scope of the journal you can find out from the instructions to authors or the main page of the journal. Confirm that neither the manuscript nor any parts of its content are currently under consideration or published in any other journal. if there is any publications before or conference presentation. Sometimes you can mention that in the letter, cover letter. Okay, I'm hearing some noise. Now, I have a few questions to you, then you'll ask me some questions, okay? In the results section, this is, I'm quoting from a paper that I reviewed as an editor. The authors said in the results section, multiple logistic regression analysis was done to identify the role of depression on obesity. I said, this is not correct. Can you tell me which section of the paper should this sentence go? I mentioned introduction, I mentioned method section, results section, and discussion. Which part of the paper fits well with this sentence? Someone tried to answer. Wrong answer, no problem. Someone said methodology. Excellent. Excellent. And under methodology, you know there is a section I mentioned data analysis. Very good, Tamina. Very good. Okay, you are so good. Okay. So in that section, you should mention this sentence, not in the results section. One of the problem of writing a paper I have seen again and again, that many things are done in appropriate section. Okay. Now here is another sentence, and I'm quoting this from a professor who have sent this paper, and I'm not so he has done many papers before. Still there are some problems. So in the discussion, he or she wrote, among ethnicity or race, 16.8% African American, 15.3% Hispanic or Latino, 15.3% all other races, 12.3% whites were obese. You see, there's a mix of who are obese and what is the distribution of ethnicity and race. So these two cannot go in single sentence with a comma there. Other problem is this prevalence of obesity was significantly different among ethnicity/race as p-value 0.000. Boys were more obese than girls, this versus that, as p-value is this. There are no differences about obesity by age group. This exact quotation from the paper submitted. Someone please point out what section is it appropriate to write all this detail of results under discussion? Yes or no? Good. Good. Omar said no, not. Janat, Mat, yes. So everybody said no. What section this should go? Your answer, please. Result. Very good. Very good. Yes, thank you so much. So you all know this detail data should not be there under discussion. That's what I mentioned. You can tell very gist, major finding in the single first paragraph. Okay, the other problem I mentioned here, when you say the prevalence of obesity was significantly different among ethnicity, race, as p-value, blah, 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 you can write p-value within parentheses. You don't have to write as p-value this. You are increasing the number of words, okay? The third problem is, when you see p-value 0.000, you find this in your SPSS or SAS, data analysis output, but you cannot write like this in a paper. Can you mention anybody, please? A little bit hard, but try. If you have p-value 0.000, what exactly you should write your p-value should be? Anybody can try? Very good. I have an excellent writer here. So you should write. You should write p. Okay, what you should do, you give a number here. If it is 000, if you use 1 here, then you should write p less than 0.001. Can you believe? Yes, thank you. So same problem here. Can you believe this professor, full professor, did a problem? Okay. And I have seen this a couple of times, believe me or not. Many people have simple things, just probably were not taught when they were students. They never learned it. So please learn it today and please follow this. Never write p equals 0.000. Thank you so much. Okay, another question about authorship. Who should be your authors? Your boss, my chair, department chair, is my author. Yes or no answer? If yes, why? If no, why? Someone please try. Should your boss be an author? First answer yes or no. Yes, should give some contribution. Good answer. Yes. So on condition, okay, depends on the condition. Very good. Okay, so boss can be an author if he or she has contribution to make in the study and also the paper. Okay, correct answer. Thank you. But boss is not always. Boss is not always an author. And that situation I've seen many times in my life. Okay, that's why I'm asking. Should the lab support people be authors? Yes or no? Tamina, yes. Any other? Depends contribution condition. Any no? Oh, okay. No, I said lab support people. Like, you know, you are doing a study where you have done, let's say, ELISA test for rotavirus, and people in the lab, they have done it, or you have studied cholera, and lab people have said that many cholera, that many no cholera. They have done the stool test. What else? Vitamin A assay. People have done the vitamin A for you. and routinely they do it in your setting, in the hospital or in your university. Some people routinely do it, lab tests. That's their job. Should they be authors? Someone said no. Can you show your answer again? Okay, let me see chat. Okay, let me see chat. Okay, I should say no in the author, but can include in the acknowledgement section. Yes, lab support is essential. So I see yes and no answer. I see controversies. Let me give you my correct answer. I like this answer. I would say no in the author, but can include in acknowledgement. Why? Why? Because lab support is a routine work. It is definitely essential, but it is part of their normal job. If there is a lab person included in your study as a co-author, co-investigator from the beginning, for some reasons, one reason can be you are doing a special lab test for this study, and that person has developed the method of doing that analysis. I give you a perfect example. In my thesis, I have done vitamin A assay in the urine. Normally, vitamin A assay is done in the blood because it does not appear in the urine normally. Vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin. But my thesis was to find out why people were excreting vitamin A or retinol in the urine. Why? So that was main study, my thesis. So we have developed some method how to do urine analysis. In that case, the lab person was included as part of my investigation team. Then I included him also in the paper. But generally, I said generally, if it is a routine work, their support group, their essential support group, yes, I agree, but does not mean they will be authors. Any essential work, any support work, any support service does not meet the requirement of an author. Okay, that does not justify to be an author. Very important thing. So case to case you can determine, but generally no. Okay, thanks. And now invite your questions. That's all I wanted to say. Professor Hamid Jan, please conduct the question and answer session.
Yes, thank you, Prof. Amal. Now we are in the question and answer session. I have two questions in the chat box, but for those who are willing to ask verbally, I will welcome. You can ask verbally, but let's settle these two questions first, then we can have a interactive session. Now, this question comes from Zainab Madyuddin. Her question is, sometimes we don't know the reason of dropout, especially when doing questionnaire-based study. So how do we explain this to the reviewer?
Okay, very good question, very practical question. There are ways to do this. And personally, I use questionnaire a lot, especially for the cross-sectional studies. If it is face-to-face, it's a little bit easier. If it is telephone survey or otherwise not in person, is a little bit difficult. So what I intend to do whenever I give a questionnaire, before that we definitely do that what is called informed consent. So they will definitely sign a paper whether they agree to participate or not agree to participate. That's important. If they agree, then they are included in the study, and then you give the questionnaire, right? Now, at that point, if someone decline to complete the questionnaire, what you can do, you can you can note down whether it's a male or what is some kind of demographic information. So if you have some demographic information, that's better. If you do not have that information, then it's a problem to really find out who actually dropped out. So when somebody give informed consent, at that point, you should try to get some demographic information. If it appears like this, in the questionnaire, you have first part demographic information, second part is your research question, real research question, and third part, if there are some confounding factors, that's how I actually design my questionnaire. So any question I use, my first part, any question, I mean the most of the questionnaire, I have first part demographic questions like age, gender, economic status, how many people in the family, blah, blah. So first about 10 questions, the demographic questions. And then if some of the people do not answer all the questions, then you can say, particular, this question was answered by so many people, and this is their characteristic, who answered, who did not answer. Okay, so there is a way you can have dropout. Is two kinds of dropout. One dropout is totally did not participate. Another dropout is certain questions were not answered by them. Okay, so try to get some information in the questionnaire about their demographics.
Okay. Okay, Prof.
Thank you.
Are we allowed to contact the participant? Let's say if we have their phone number or email, can we contact them and ask?
Yes, you can, because most of the, so I keep their phone number and address, but I use a code. I use a code for the questionnaire like A, B, C, or some number 001, 002, or so and so. And then you keep that information, their address and phone number separate with that code number tagged to it, but keep it sealed and not given to everybody. Only the PI, or even may not be the PI, a third person of your team who is not involved in your study may control that.
Okay. Okay, Prof. Okay, before we go to the second question, I need to remind all the participants that number one, there is a registration form for evaluation. Please complete the form. Number two, we have uploaded link for the part one lecture. And also, I think the part two lecture link is also given, if I'm not mistaken. And number three, we have also uploaded link for the lecture slides in the Power PDF format. So if you look at the chat box, you can click on the Google Drive link and you can download two files. First is the PDF file of the first part lecture, and the second file is the PDF file for the second part lecture. So just a reminder before you leave, please do that. I'll move to the second question. This question sounds like this. How to avoid writing passive voice? Sometimes we use it when trying to rephrase sentences.
Repeat sentences. Yes, yes. It's possible that you repeat sentences, especially between result and discussion. You can do that, but don't. You can paraphrase
Sorry,
them.
Prof. Not repeat, rephrase. I repeat the question.
Sorry,
I repeat the question. Is how to avoid
is
writing.
breaking.
Oh, sorry. The question is how to avoid writing passive voice.
Writing what?
How to avoid writing passive voice.
Passive voice. Okay. Passive
Yeah.
voice. Okay. How to write passive voice? I
How to
gave two
avoid.
examples.
How to avoid. How to
How to
avoid
avoid
writing passive voice in manuscript.
so active voice is better, right? So I gave example.
Yeah.
Two examples.
I typed the question in the chat box now. You can check.
How to avoid writing passive voice? Sometimes we use it when trying to rephrase sentences. Yeah, but I said active voice is better. If it is not always possible, you can use passive voice, but try to use active voice.
Okay, Prof. Any other people have any question? Participants?
I try to learn your feedback also. So I know you'll be evaluating this lecture and me, but if you have any point to mention, you can also email me. That's very helpful for me. I know two people emailed me immediately after my last lecture. We are trying to publish paper with you, so why not? How many people are now in this session? About 80 people or 70 people?
We have 95 just now.
Hamid Jan?
We had 95 just now.
95. So 95, so many. I'm so encouraged 95 people participated. At least if I say 15 people start writing, will it be too much expectation?
Yes, I
Is
think
you start
everyone is writing.
Yeah,
I think everyone is writing, but
I know everyone is trying to write, but it may not be an excellent paper. It may not be publishable. That is okay. I want to help you from today. Whatever you have written, if you have data, first step you can always do, as in our first session, everybody mentioned that the first part of our work should be data analysis. And then construct your table and figures.
yes.
Why not? Please do that with me. I tell you, I can help you from today. Anytime I have a lot of time, and you send me your data and your data output. If you have done any analysis, send me them. I'll definitely need some information about your study. If you have a questionnaire, I'll need that questionnaire to understand your study. Then
Yes.
I can help you about your data analysis, about your write-up. It's
Excellent.
possible.
Yeah. There is a question. Can we have a further program? We can send you manuscript and you can comment in this group. I think there is
And,
some. It sounds like a workshop, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. That's a good plan. I mean, if you have anything, you can send it to me. We are doing everything in a workshop format.
Hmm.
Lecture is one part, but our main goal is to get something out of this discussion and workshop. And
Hmm.
that's something productive. Number one is paper. Number two is a research. You can generate a new research
Hmm.
by talking with me. Okay, so research and paper. And also, I'll be talking about how to evaluate, how to review a paper that we'll be discussing in the future.
Yeah.
So start today writing a paper or writing a research project. Send it to me. It may take 2 months to finalize it, but start today. Please,
Okay, good. I have
please.
included your contact email in the chat box. I
That
think
makes sense?
anyone who has a manuscript or who has a draft or plan to write a manuscript, you can contact Prof. Amal directly through that email, and probably that will make the ball rolling. And if we see more people coming in, then we can plan for an online workshop where everybody we can put in one room and do it virtually so that everybody can benefit and learn from each other. Prof, there is one more question from these participants. Is about in terms of authorship, how do we define a role of biostatistician?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Very good question. Biostatistician is generally not an author because if you if you take the help of a biostatistician, that is his normal work. In an academic institution, there are biostatisticians. That is their normal work. But this does not work all the time. They demand they demand to be an author. And then I have seen many biostatisticians in my life. They're authors of so many papers. They do not have any clue about the study, but they're the authors. That is not fair. That's really not good, even on their credit. So, in generally speaking, biostatistician, this is their routine work. I mentioned earlier, like lab people, if the lab work is a routine work, they do not deserve to be an author. Very strict policy in the journals. A biostatistician's work is a routine work, not demand for an authorship.
Mm. But
But
however, I
I
think if
said,
the biostatistician is also involved in the writing of the manuscript, I think that could
yes,
be exceptional. Okay.
exactly. So even for the design of the research, if biostatistician's role in a research very important. So if you include a biostatistician as your co-investigator, that's fine. That's fine.
Mm.
That's important also. That's also important because donors want to see that statistics part is taken care by a biostatistician. That is very important and that is very valid. You
Mm.
should include, if needed, if you as a first author or principal investigator cannot do all the works, you can definitely include a biostatistician in your study.
Mhm.
That is applicable, that is accepted.
Okay, perfect. Any other
Hello.
questions?
Can I ask one last question?
Yes, please.
For example,
Please.
I did conduct a research, but the dropout is very high. It's only respond about 40% like that. Okay. I've tried to send for the manuscript for few journal, but it been rejected. And there's some also maybe some comment that we cannot correct back what the thing that we have did. And there might be, if we conduct a research that something that we have did before this, then be commented that we cannot correct it anymore. Okay. And then how we want to make this kind of manuscript publishable? Okay. In the
So you said your
yeah.
sample, your
What?
sample was 40.
What? Pardon? Hello?
Is it 40% or 40% included in your study?
I mean 40% respondent rate. The respond only. Okay, very
Or
very low.
response rate
Yes,
40%,
yes,
40% response rate.
yes,
Okay, out
yes.
of, so if it is 40%, I have to know a little bit more, because 40% response rate in some cases is not bad, depending on what type of study you have done and what population you have done. Like if you have some Dr. Hamid Jan's group have done some study on metabolic syndrome in endangered population. Dr. Hamid Jan, you remember, right? Metabolic syndrome in endangered population. And so, I don't know, he's hearing. So in some cases, if the population is hard to reach, there's enough justification, 40% response rate
Yes,
is okay.
Prof. Amal was referring to my Orang Asli project, the indigenous people, that we have a
Yes.
very high dropout in the Orang Asli research. I think when we explained to the journal editors and we explained that it is not easy to go to their nature and to get as much as we can, and it was acceptable. But I think you need to explain what is your population and what is your final number.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking
Mm.
that my problem is, I think maybe the group that the research that I did is the group, they are a bit sensitive and not sensitive with that topics. So then reluctant a bit to participate in that research. So it's that
And I think you
might
need
be
to
the
highlight
reason.
that in your
Yeah.
writing up, probably. Is it not, Dr. Amal? To
Yes,
highlight that issue.
you send me that manuscript, whatever format it is, then I can, it is better for me to understand. It is easier for me to understand the nature of your work. Okay, that will help me to say if it is okay, 40% or not okay.
Okay.
All
Okay,
right, good.
thank you, Prof. How about other condition? If not about the dropout, if you think that the paper have a lots of comments, problems, the research have a lot of problem, but still we want to publish, but seem that a bit difficult to correct something that we have done during the research. I mean,
Okay,
it's
so
still
you have,
possible. It's still possible.
yeah, if your question is, you have done the study, you have
Yes.
sent the paper to a journal, and there are a lot of comments, reviewer
Yes.
comments, and most of them are negative comments, right?
Yes, yeah. And
Okay.
then for example, they want to correct, they want us to correct something that we can't correct, for example, because
Right.
yeah. So 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 how are we going
Yes.
to move
So
on about that?
that's a very good point. Actually, we often encounter this kind of problem. Some reviewers, I'm an editor, so I I get many reviewers' comments like that. They want to do some work that is almost impossible to do at that stage. Okay, as an editor, I have to make some choice about the acceptance of the paper depending on the situation. So if your condition is the paper gets so many bad comments, and some of the comments they want to make redo some of the things, then I can tell you exactly how to reshape that paper. Sometime I can tell you now, without seeing your paper, it can be a short communication, not a full paper. So short communication is a compromise between a long paper or original paper and a small paper. Short communication is also an acceptable format of publishing a paper. And the least you can do, even if you send a letter to the editor, a letter in Lancet is quite good rating, as not as good as an original paper, but sometimes also change the format. So that's what I can say without seeing everything in details. So you can still publish it with some change of the format of the paper. Another thing I can suggest, some of the comments, reviewer comments, I do use them under discussion, under my limitation section. You can also do that. So let me see those things, then I can make proper judgment about the paper.
Yes, I would highly advise Dr. Zainab to share the paper.
Okay, thank you.
I can share with you my personal experience. I had one paper been hitting the wall. You know, we sent to say every journal, it keep on being rejected. And until one day I submitted to Prof. Amal to do some postmortem, forensic postmortem. He did some surgery on the paper, major surgery. And after that, you know, his contribution, we were able to publish that paper. So I think it's always important to have a mentor or someone senior to look at it. You know, sometimes when we are just a junior lecturer, we do not see the limit, the possibilities that it can be pushed forward further. But somebody who has experience will be able to look through that element. So I would highly advise Zainab and also many others who are having similar problems to get help from Professor Amal. I mean, that is the purpose of we having Prof. Amal as our fellow, scientific academic fellow for research, and we need to utilize his expertise while he is here with us in USN. Any other question? I will still allow. We have about 5 minutes.
At least we are timely today.
Yeah, I think we have a very productive session, very interactive session. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's all. It seems that everybody is quiet. I assume everybody had enough information. Thank you very much for your attendance, and we will have another series or another lecture soon. Just check your email later. I will discuss with Prof. Amal on the date and the topic. I can't remember what is the next topic, but we will surely come back to the email and share with everyone what is the next topic will be. I think that's all for our session today.
Yes.
I really appreciate Prof. Amal for your time.
Thank you so much, Hamid Jan. You are excellent. You are doing so great works.
Thank you.
So everybody be happy, and you are the winner. That's my message. You are the winner. You can win getting paper published. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
We give
Bye.
a big virtual hand to Prof. Amal for his time and energy.
Thank you.
Have a good rest.
You.
Have a good
Thank
rest,
you.
Prof. Amal.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.